job, Kennedy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is helpful.
Outstanding. Good work. Talk to me, Elise.
So I kind of wrote out the graphs, like from the Danica's chart, the things that like I knew the relationship between F and F prime. So I kind of drew them out, and then I was thinking G could not have a relative maximum. But then like when I drew it out, it started to come up at the last part, because F prime was positive and then it was increasing. So then on all of them I just wasn't sure like if I should count the very end where it's like increasing and getting to the top.
Gotcha. Really good question. So let's look at this definition real quick. Hold on. Let's look at a picture, maybe it'll be easier. Now I've gone this far. Come on, where is it? There it is. Have somebody time how long it takes me to get from one spot to the other. Because as I'm at the board, I feel this pressure building, like I'm taking forever to get this. I'm hoping if you actually timed it, it'd be like 17 seconds, which isn't too bad, you know. So, but I feel like it's, yeah, you understand. So I'm looking for where F, G, or H have a relative max. So I have this memorized right here. Okay. So it says any function. That means we could be talking about F, G, or H. We could be talking about H prime, F prime, whatever. Okay. In this case, we are talking about F, G, and H. So you'd say G has a relative max when G changes increase to decrease. With me?
Yeah.
When you sketched G, did you see G changing in this way in the place you were worried about?
I drew it like that. I don't know if you can see that, but just kind of like a concave. So all I saw was at the very end.
It was still increasing, right? Right. So because you saw your drawing of G ended up having kind of a thing like this at the end.
Yeah.
So because here G is not switching back to decrease, that will never be a relative max.
Okay.
To be a relative max, G would have to change back.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Now let me show you something else. Now this could be an absolute max or a global max. That's different, but it cannot be a relative max.
Okay.
Now what I would have done is a little different than what you did, and it's a little bit faster. I would have used this part of the definition, or I would have just used Danica's chart and said, hey, G is going to have a relative max if G does this. Which means G will have a relative max if the derivative of G does something completely different, does that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you tell me, does the derivative of G ever change from positive y coordinates to negative y coordinates?
Mm-hmm.
It does not, so that answers the question. G cannot have a relative max.
Okay. So then it could only be at going from positive to negative?
Correct. Because H prime is always positive y coordinates, so H prime isn't changing from positive to negative y coordinates, so H can't have a relative max. F does change. Say stop, Reese, when you see F. I'm going to like trace F. I just want to make sure you got it. I'm going to trace F prime, sorry. When I trace F prime, you say stop when you see F prime changing from positive y values to negative y values. Very exciting.
Stop.
Good. So, just to be clear, this is not a relative max on f prime. But whatever that x coordinate is, that would be a relative max for f.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So it's only positive to negative, not negative to positive.
Negative to positive would be a relative min.
Okay.
And also, so I guess when you have a max or a min, that's when you can find the tangent slope, right? When you have max and min.
So if a function has a relative max, then at the location of the relative max, the tangent slope is often zero. Is that what you meant? It doesn't have to be.
But then in this case, it crosses the x-axis.
This one it would, because the slope prior is positive, the slope after is negative, the y value here is definitely zero, so this slope would have to be zero. You could have a relative max that looked like this, Julia, where the corner is still a relative max on f, but the tangent slope there is undefined. And then you've seen this kind of relative max as well. Again, the tangent slope at that relative max would be undefined. Is that your question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good job, you guys. Well done.